I saw this whole charred mass that used to be the front door.
We lost a lot of our instruments, our drums, our keyboard.
Distressed. It changed everything.
My immediate concern was, oh no, what on earth are we going to do?
When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze.
The Victoria Fire Department responded to the 600 block of Queens Avenue just before 6:30 a.m. It only took 10 minutes to extinguish the blaze that started at the front entrance outside and worked its way in. The smoke damage.
So I heard about the fire at around 6 o'clock in the morning. I was one of the first people to be called because of my position, and immediately jumped in the car and came out to be greeted by the incredible Victoria Fire Department, who had already put out the fire by the time that I arrived.
I was woken up by a phone call about 6:20 in the morning from our executive director, Stephen, saying, I need you to get down there. There's a fire. We need you to be calm. We need everybody to be okay. But you need to get there. So he lives farther away, and I live relatively close. So I got down here as fast as I could, was one of the first managers on site, made sure that we kept our staff away from what was happening, made sure that our community members were safe.
So I first heard about it at 7 a.m. It was actually more like 6:30 a.m. I awoke to many messages and calls on my phone that there was a fire in progress at Queens. You know, jumped out of bed, threw on some clothes, and headed down here as quickly as possible. By the time I arrived at Queens, the fire had been put out and the aftermath was unfolding on the street.
I was actually one of the first people scheduled to be on site. I remember getting ready for work that morning and hearing a bunch of sirens downtown and thinking, oh no, there's some emergency downtown. I hope everyone's okay. Didn't really think too much about it until I was walking up Government Street, till I rounded the corner and went, oh no. And I thought, immediately started thinking of like how it's going to affect the community and all the people that we serve.
Well, the day of the fire, I believe that I first heard about it from my phone was going off every couple of minutes, and I checked and it was being. I think I saw it on Facebook. I think Drew had posted something about it. So of course I ended up coming down here, and firefighters were just finishing up, cleaning everything up, and getting the front door nailed up and whatnot. And most of the pastoral team was down here just kind of supporting what was going on. And
So I got there, and about 8 o'clock, so I missed all of the action. But I saw this whole charred mass that used to be the front door, and Wade and some of the others were pulling stuff out of there that was all burnt out. It was wet because it had been hosed down by the fire department. What I didn't mention before was the day before the fire. Make of this what you will, but the day before the fire,
we baptized a longtime member of the church and volunteer at our organization. It was a really special day.
It was completely packed out.
so we had a lot of people there to see the church in operation. And then the next morning we have a fire.
I felt shocked when I first saw the damage and how damaged the door was. But one thing I didn't realize is that how much damage smoke can do throughout a building.
The fire itself only barely burned through the emergency fire door in the hospitality chapel area. Smoke damage got up not just to the first floor, but all the way up as high as the second floor.
The loss was hard. There was a lot that went out the door that we weren't able to keep.
We had to trash the food. There was bread we had just gotten from Cobb's Bakery the day before. Everything had to be trashed. Everything had to be shut down.
We had a cardboard box in one of my colleagues' offices that was the first ever donation box or hamper box that the Mustard Seed had used back in the 70s. And it was just a cardboard box with our old logo on it. That was lost in the fire.
We lost a lot of our instruments, our drums, our keyboard. There was a back room that housed a lot of the things that we had.
And so I was very worried about specific items in my office, about the smoke damage. My office was one of the worst hit for smoke. And so it was painful not knowing what I would get back and it was hard. There were a couple of posters, a couple of paintings downstairs that we really weren't sure we were going to save. And then when we got back in the building, we got to see them and that they were still here and that most of them were still here. And that was really helpful.
It impacted every facet of our operations. We were not allowed to go in the building. It impacted us in so many ways it's hard to even describe. We were out of the building for almost 5 weeks, and everything had to be repainted, cleaned, resurfaced. So it impacted operations a great deal.
Literally overnight, we went from being a team that was based mostly indoors to a team that was based mostly outdoors. It immediately, of course, affected how could we serve people. We were typically used to serving coffee and soup and sandwiches and lunches inside. Obviously, that couldn't happen after the fire.
We had to figure out how we were even going to serve food without a kitchen, without our volunteers.
And we were able to very quickly, within 24 hours, have a plan in place to serve food out of our parking lot. And to have our hospitality team be available not only to serve food, but to comfort people that were coming, because there was a lot of grief in the community over the fire.
We were fortunate that we could access our parking lot to still provide food for our clients. It wasn't the full amount of food that they were getting as though they were coming in the building. So it was nice to know that we could still offer fruits, vegetables, and produce. I don't think it was that challenging to make that maneuver, but sometimes the weather played a challenging role.
We were back offering food to our community members the day after the fire. We were, by the end of the first week, we had a full market, full hospitality team out there. It didn't matter how cold it was. It didn't matter if it was pouring rain. We were out there. We were working and making sure that our community had food and had the basics that they needed.
But we tried to keep the service order and the service procedure as much the same as possible, so it wasn't as big a shock to the congregations as it could have been. So when we moved from Queens Avenue to Centennial United, we were using their gymnasium for one thing, so it's a difference right there. But instead of having like a full band with bass and drums and keyboards for the worship music, we just had to go with Gordy and his guitar, which worked just great.
The other big change is we have to carry all of our equipment. And so it's a lot of setup, a lot of takedown. It's not, to get to the final result on Sunday morning, I don't think people realize how much work we put into making sure that everything is in place.
Going down and fear surround me.
The Mustard Seed is an organization that the community knows and loves. Victoria is a very generous city.
Community as a whole who have
came out in different ways,
offered money, offered time.
We were overwhelmed with help and offers of help from volunteers emailing in, how can I help? Can I come in and clean? Can I clean the soot?
One of the first firefighters on the scene, he organized the volunteer effort by his mates with the Victoria Fire Department to come and wash down the walls, particularly the walls in the loading dock area, which were really whacked with the toxic smoke. They had the breathing equipment that was needed. They had the chemicals that were needed. So there was that.
Emmanuel Baptist, they made sandwiches for the first 3 weeks. Every week they would deliver 200 to 300 sandwiches so that we would have food to give out.
Acme across the street were donating cleaning supplies.
Certainly the Forge Church stepped up because we had our Palm Sunday, and so they opened up for us to have that service.
I think it was the second day after the fire, there was this young boy came by. He was probably about 10 or 12 years old, and he came by with his dad. And he had heard about the fire on the news and he knew he wanted to do something about it.
He had done a collection in his neighborhood of all the bottles, and then he had brought them to the bottle depot beside us, and then came over.
He brought a donation of, it was, I think, around $25, and I just thought, how incredible is that this young kid is leading us.
That was amazing.
Huge thank yous to them, to all of the different restoration committees, to the city itself, to the different newspapers, to you name it.
We had a tremendous outpouring of support from everyone in the community. It was really, really beautiful.
You know, the building back process has gone faster than anyone could have predicted.
At the very beginning, we thought it might take up to and including a year before we got back into our space. Well, when Downs Construction showed up, that 1 year became 6 months. And it went from 6 months to 5 months to 4 months to now it seems that we're going to be able to be reopened by Labor Day. Which is a ridiculous timeline that was entirely unexpected.
And how the church reacts to this remolding of itself after a fire in that doorway, right there. In that doorway just over 6 months ago proves that this is a place that is always being rebuilt and restored and renewed. Within 24 hours after the fire, for those of you who are unaware, there was already in our parking lot, our hospitality department, our
Let's have a tour to see what's changed and what's the same. We have all new worship equipment over here. Stage has been pushed all the way back because we've removed the entire clothing area that's here. Instead, the clothing area is going upstairs, and we're going to build back better with a smaller boutique that has better, higher-end items for our community. On top of that, what you're going to be noticing over in these rooms here over the course of the next year are washers and dryers, industrial washers and dryers, also with showers, because we realize that when people come in out of the cold, a lot of times they just end up having to throw their clothes out because there's no place to wash them.
Of course, we all wish maybe it hadn't had to happen in the first place, but saying that so much good has come out of something that was difficult.
I know there are so many people that I spoke to right after the fire, and they had this look of disgusting pity on their face. That was such a terrible thing. And I just have to keep telling them, no, you know, we're rebuilding. We're building back faster. We're building back better.
But we saw it as an opportunity to refresh and come back from things stronger and better.
There's this great passage in Isaiah chapter 61, and if you look at around verse 4, what you're going to see is God speaking with and through the prophet Isaiah, who says, they will restore, they will renew these places that have been devastated. And that is exactly what's happening here at the Mustard Seed Street Church, is even though fire and smoke may devastate an area, that the Lord, through his servants, will continue to restore, rebuild, and renew who we are as a church.
And that's been one of the main things that's come out of this, is how when you're constantly looking to the Lord, no matter what you're going through, you will come back on top and come back even better than before.